Welcome everybody to our Sunday Truth Talks. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm an energy coach, energy therapist, and energy healer, and I'm coming to you here in my function as a Living True Self radio. And these truth talks that I do are concepts that we can use to expand our consciousness, that we can expand to find answers. So if you come here to get answers, then you will be disappointed, because I'm not teaching answers. I'm not teaching a certain teaching school or bias. I'm teaching people how to find truth for themselves. And I wanted to take the opportunity today to show you the systematic process of truth training, how to find, how to discern, and how to really break down the process within yourself without questioning yourself. You are invited here, those of you who come to join me live on Facebook Sunday mornings, to ask live questions and to actually get a few answers to your particular questions, or at least, how you can, a roadmap as to how you can find them, how you can form this inner compass that allows you to internalize these answers, to find truth for yourself. All right, so why is it so important to learn how to discern truth? Well, there's several components right now, and I don't want to go deeper into our global transformation situation. You know this, most of you are following my YouTube channel, my energy tips, and so forth. I constantly report and write and create videos about the energetic component here of what we're experiencing, and where I see the collective is going with this. But there are some more factual things, and that is that we are indeed, and I think economists will agree with this as well, that we are in this transformation from the industrial age into the information age. This has been going on for a while already, so this isn't news. But what we are discovering now, especially with all the political discussions and so forth that are going on, is that with the more or less unlimited access to information, the need to be able to discern what we are reading, what we are seeing there, is more important than it ever was before. And so here in this truth training today, I want to also make it clear to you that maybe because you weren't aware of things before, doesn't mean that you can't change this. This is a necessity that we, or a skill that we need to develop, an instrumental skill that can help us to be successful in the future. Now, the other component is that we are currently experiencing something like a crisis globally. This is a first time in the history of humanity that the whole entire planet, that everyone on the planet is affected by this corona situation. And with it, of course, the uncertainty levels of our future. How can we survive? And how can we not just survive? How can we thrive? Also triggers a lot of questions in us. For most of us, at first, when we're in this shocked state, it triggers fear. And this is a bit, we will talk about this here in depth. This is a bit our problem, because when we are in our fear, when the survival mechanism in us, when that gets triggered, here in consciousness work, we call this ego, not necessarily the psychological ego or the egotistical or selfish nature of us humans, but the part of us that is linked to our instincts, to our nervous system, that will trigger, the coping mechanisms so that we can survive in a given situation based on our perception. And so the first reaction to crisis is always this fear, and this triggers the survival mechanism. But in this survival mechanism, in this ego state, our decisions are not always based on truth. They are based on a fear, or they are based on something that we are currently experiencing or perceiving as, like, say, the most pressing subject. All right, like, say you lost your job, or you can't pay your rent. Then this experience, what you're perceiving here right now, becomes the bias, becomes the intention behind all your choices, because it dominates you. Okay, there is no way that you can just ignore the fact that you don't have money to buy food, for instance. This is just one example. The same can apply to maybe relationships, or when we run into issues with things in our reality that are no longer like they were before, or that are simply changing, that are, sort of forcing us to do something about this. And this is a cool thing about crisis. Everyone who has gone through, like a really big life-changing event knows this. Not maybe in the situation, but in retrospect, we can always see that this crisis also induced some kind of catharsis. It forced us to do things, and therefore we were more likely to let go of something that wasn't even good for us, or we were able to break through manipulation, or we were able to break through our own comfort zone. And so there is lots of positive news in this, what we collectively at the moment perceive as a crisis, because it does something to us. It brings us to this place where we realize that some kind of change is needed, and it triggers questions in us. And I want to point out, guys, that asking questions is one of these wonderful abilities that we have as humans. Because when it comes down to the awareness level and the way we interact with our reality, then this is the major trait that differentiates us from all other living beings or animals on this planet. We are able to ask questions. But with asking questions also comes the problem to know whom to ask. Who is the authority here? Who can give me answers? And this is then when we inevitably run into things such as bias, agenda, propaganda, and so forth, belief systems and so forth, because we're not quite sure yet if we know what is true for us. So how can we get certainty that what we are perceiving as information, as answer, is really true for us? How can we even get answers? And then we need to ask ourselves as well, what do we believe to be true? Because we will find that there are several layers of our perception that can prevent us from recognizing truth, or from actually realizing that we've arrived in truth. For example, if we see truth but we don't like truth and we want truth to go away. But in this systematic process, right, let's examine a few things that most people do. Let me ask you guys here, where do you guys go to find truth? Where do you first look for truth? Media, law, science, religion, family values, social values, philosophy, therapy or coaching, energy work maybe. Where do you look for answers? Do you go to a fortune teller? Do you resort to maybe astrology as a tool to, give you more certainty? This is important to ask yourself, because when you, in your choice, of where to look for truth. You will get a lot of information about your own intentions and about your own bias. All right, so a lot of people do this sort of shotgun random thing. They'll look for answers in all of these areas and will not be any smarter or any more, sure about what this, future is going to bring for them, or what their roadmap to, not just surviving but also thriving is. So who is the authority here? And why, for instance, why does prediction or predicting and fortune telling and forecasting, why is this not based on truth? Yes, and you might laugh here because I also do forecasts. I am calibrating, all senses of my truth perception to, my clients, to how I perceive the collective energies, and I can, sort of come up with something like a probability. So forecasts and predictions are probabilities, but they are not based on truth. They're just based on a trajectory of where this is going to go if no changes are made. And so we need to understand that our truth is not really changing. Our truth is in us. It is not like so many say, well, yeah, everybody has their own truth. There is a unchanging truth in us, but the way we translate it, the way we interpret it, and the way we act upon it is what creates the trajectory into the future, is what will manifest or co-creates here the reality for us tomorrow. So you can see truth training is not just some mental game. It really leads to fundamental questions such as, who am I and what is my purpose? And yes, most of us ask us, what should I do? Okay. In order to break through some of these layers that can cloud your ability to feel truth, to feel this one truth in you, we have to learn how to take down all these clouds, these layers that are around that truth perception that we have. And what makes me so sure that we have truth perception? Most of us question our own reality. And we're not very convinced that we know truth. Or if we are convinced that we know truth, we maybe meet somebody else, okay, who is also convinced that they know truth. And now we have the problem that we have two truths, right? And then we say, well, yeah, it's in the eye of the observer. And we get to sort of a point of relativism with this, which in and of itself is untrue. Why is that? How can I say this? How can I prove this? And how can you get to the same conclusion? So this is the essence of truth training. How can you verify any kind of information, any kind of perception, any kind of thought, any kind of emotion, any kind of physical sensation, any kind of belief or behavior in you? Yes, by yourself. How can you internalize this and discern if something is true or not? Yes, and Annette, you commenting here, truth is from the heart. Now, this is a very beautiful statement, and I fully agree with you based on my personal experience and based on what I am teaching other people. But let's get there step by step. What is it in us, or what is it that lets me make the statement that we literally have a sense for truth, that we have a compass in us that can feel truth? Some of that comes from science. Any protoplasmic cell, any living cell, has the ability to know if something is toxic or nourishing, if it is life-giving or if it is life-destructive. And it will, you can see this, like I said, with some of the lowest life forms that we know, amoebas, for example, how they, without a brain, without a nervous system, without any of these fancy things that we have, such as frontal cortex and so forth, can decide if something is good for them or not, if it makes them stay alive or if it will kill them. And because we are, composed of these protoplasmic cells, each and every cell within us carries that ability to discern whether something is nourishing or toxic for us. We intrinsically, just from a pure biological, physiological standpoint, all have this ability. Now, where can you find this and where can you verify this? For example, kinesiology uses this as diagnostic tool. All right, so some health practitioners are schooled in kinesiology, muscle testing, where they use your own body to discern, what the problem is. All right, and this is then something you can also learn in the course of truth training, of systematically training yourself how to arrive at this place of your internalized inner insight. All right, you can use things or tools or skills such as muscle testing, to help you on the way. I am actually not a big fan of making yourself dependent on outer tools. I am somebody who teaches people how to really discern truth from within. So in the long run, it is always better to be completely independent and free. So what is it actually that happens in us when we find answers? Have you asked yourself that question? What happens in you if you find answers? If you find truth, say, what happens in you? It creates a relief in you, doesn't it? I said in the beginning, crisis always triggers questions. It triggers a seeking. But when does the seeking end? And this is another component, another aspect of us humans. There is something like a feeling of joy, like a deep fulfillment, perhaps even a feeling of completeness or wholeness, an inner peace when we have these light bulb moments. Yes, exactly, Denise. It's a sense of peace. We feel, I found the answer. I no longer need to seek. And I want you guys to understand, because you are truth seekers, and many of you are also spiritual seekers, you seeking for the deeper truth. Not just, should I eat meat or not, or, is this the right partner for me or not? I mean, this is what most people get motivated by. They want to know what's right. But the seekers of truth, they know that what's right is relative. It's relative to social values, to your geography, to your culture, to your belief system, to your gender, to your ethnicity. Yeah, it's relative. But what is true is not. And to all of you here who are in this vicious cycle of constantly seeking for what is right, and who end up being tortured, tormented by your own fears of making mistakes. All right? The good news is there is no such thing as a mistake, because there is no such thing as right. There only is true or not. And why is that such a big difference? Because when you are seeking the right thing, it will be a never-ending search. And where will you look for it? You will look for it on the outside, ultimately, for the feedback. You'll say, was this right? Was I good? Was I being a good girl, a good boy? When you seek truth, you will find it. This is what we call wisdom. But you will not find it out on the outside. It doesn't depend on others. It doesn't depend on your father or on your president or on your religion or anything like that. This deep inner peace here that you guys described, and also, yes, Cheryl, and in a knowingness and a trust, exactly. This can only come from within. So isn't it logical then that instead of paying so much attention to doing the right thing and getting approval and validation from the outside, that we start refocusing on our inner world and find out what these clouds of perception are. Why is it even that although we have this physiological sense and we even have an energetic sense, all right, that can tell us through an inner prompting if something is good for us or not. And how can we learn to trust in that, to have faith in that without having blind faith, right? Without seeing a sign in everything, and, sort of going by what fortune tellers told me or what the media is telling me, or, being manipulated in some ways, often also gaslit, where our own reality is constantly being questioned, where our thoughts and our own realizations, our own insights get hijacked by others or by the collective, for instance, or where things get twisted around or deflected. The reason why this is so difficult, guys, is because we never actually asked this one question, namely, who is the authority in truth? And there is no authority on the outside. So what we were not taught in school, and what most of our parents are not teaching us, is that this knowingness, this trust, that this needs to be built from within. We have the senses. And those of you who are energetically sensitive, you are sort of born with this more intense skill. In other words, you are born with the crisis of coming into an era where there is massive manipulation, out of control, gaslighting, hijacking, deflecting, and untruths going on, so that you can begin to ask the right questions. Instead of questioning yourself, to question, who says? How do I know it's true? Where does this information come from? Can I learn this too? Is this truly how I'm feeling? Is this truly what I need? Is this truly what I want? These are the kinds of questions that you will begin to be able to answer when you have a functioning inner truth compass. But let me tell you, it takes a lot of work. Because we have our ego, all right, and our ego has a direct link, a hardwire to our survival mechanisms, to our coping mechanisms, fight, flight, or freeze. You've heard about this. Then we have our belief system that is formed through conditioning, that is formed through our personal experiences, our trauma, and sometimes even also our karmic aspects. For many that are energetically sensitive, also through etheric aspects, where we see like, I am not entirely free in my perception because there's always something that is kind of looming or that is influencing me or that scares me or that I have to ward off. This is where we get into the unseen energetic interaction between people and the etheric sort of auric energy, if you will, with ourselves. All right. So when you are energetically sensitive and you're born into this time, you are born with the skill set. We all have that skill, but you are born with the crisis to train that skill set, to work with it, because otherwise you will end up in a place where, and this is what many of us, especially if we are a little older, actually have experienced. You will be ridiculed, you'll be told that you are a nutball, that you're a woo-woo person, or that, you know, whatever it is that you're questioning or whatever it is that you are feeling is wrong. All right. And again, here, remember, right is not the same as truth. All right. So that's one of these like little sort of switches in you that you constantly have to test. Okay. You have to test. What is it actually that I'm seeking here? Am I seeking what is right, or am I seeking what is true? And then you also have to ask yourself, do I just want to get by? What is my motivation here? What are my actions based on? Do I just want to survive, or do I actually want to thrive? Or do I want to inspire? Do I want to become a beacon of truth, a beacon of life, light? I brought up the question, where am I, taking the confidence to say I'm a living true self radio? This is because I have systematically learned how to discern truth. I'm not a better person. I'm not a fortune teller. No. For the last 40 years of my life, I have systematically trained my awareness to ask these kind of questions and to come to this place where I know exactly what it feels like when something is true, what my motivation is, when there's manipulation, and how to reduce, how to clear this, how to reconnect with my own truth, and then how to bring it into expression. This is basically what truth training is. This is what I teach people here in all the programs that I have: online training, energy coaching, remote energy healing sessions. I teach them how to heal those parts that are not whole, that are not in truth, that are manipulated, that are, externalized, how to bring it back in, and then how to, yes, Annette, you already said it, there is how to feel truth from within, and guess where we find this? We find this in our heart. So this seeking, guys, has been such a strong topic here over these last 30 years with New Age and all this, woo-woo stuff coming up. But what most people don't realize is that New Age and esotericism, if they don't have a systematic school behind them, if they cannot really tell you where this info is coming from, if you cannot actually verify what they're saying. I mean, anybody who says, oh, I channeled this, or the beings are telling me this, or, it is written that, or whatever, is not enough for you to trust in that. If you trust in that, that's called blind faith. And what is blind faith, guys? Blind faith is a form of laziness, a form of spiritual laziness. Because the work that it takes to actually know your inner truth compass and to go with what feels true to you and what doesn't, all right, that requires a lot of courage. It requires this systematic internalization process. So how can I even know that I am manipulated? I mean, if you think about any type of choice that you make throughout your daily life, is this even a free decision? So freedom, the daughter of truth, all right, is something that allows us to know, or that allows us to question what we are experiencing, what we are observing, what we are witnessing, and what we are choosing and co-creating. If we don't have freedom, guys, whatever the dependency is, whatever the layer is, whatever the confusion is, all right, it means that we are not free. And when we're not free, we cannot assume that what we are choosing, what we're thinking, what we're emoting, even what we're sensing in our body, or what we are saying or doing is based on truth. We are confused, we are overwhelmed, we feel powerless, or depending on sort of the predisposition that we have, we go into entitlement, or we go into victimhood, or we create an overall negativity, passivity around us. We focus on lack. We have unrealistic expectations, even go into magical thinking. We live in the constant fear either of making mistakes or losing what we have. We try to maintain what we have. We reinforce the lack through that. And ultimately, what we are, presenting here to the world and, within ourselves as well, is something like a beacon of untruth. And this is the problem with most of even, you guys here who have already spent a lot of energy, a lot of time in seeking. You need to pay attention to this, that when you keep on seeking, all right, then there's either something with your ego, all right, that your ego doesn't want to see truth, or there is something with your ability to feel it, which is often linked to the connection to your body, not wanting to feel, not wanting to have emotions, judging emotions, or you have an overly strong inner negative voice, inner critical voice that keeps on keeping you down, that keeps on manipulating you. And to break through either of these, most common layers, you need to start from within. You need to learn, what it feels like when it's true. You need to learn, how your body feels like, what your emotions feel like, what your thoughts are, and also perhaps sort of what some of the energetic influences are that can affect your perception of truth. But if you are in a constant seeking, guys, then you are caught in your ego. You are caught in your coping mechanism. You are not actually on the way of finding truth. And this is actually here an oxymoron, because you cannot really find truth. The seeking is an inner process. It is not something where you have to go and turn every stone. The seeking is an internalization process. It comes through knowing yourself, knowing your true intention, knowing your payoffs, knowing your inner compass, communicating, relating with your true self that is in there here to translate, to transcode, your soul self's information, your true purpose, who you truly are, to your 3D self. You need to build a relationship with truth. And this is then actually what it is that I offer people to learn. And actually these monthly true self transmissions are free in order to help people to form this relationship with their own true self. And what was very surprising to me in the beginning was to see how many people are literally afraid when they begin to connect with their truth self, even though they may have really cool, enlightening experiences and it relaxes them and they begin to feel new sensations. There is a fear of truth there, because the way we define truth, still as right, okay, versus true, okay, leads to us rejecting this part in us, our true self. We're so afraid to discover things such as our shadow aspects, or the things that we are repressing, that we are running away from, that we are rejecting, that we hate about ourselves, that we resist. And this is really, if you are asking me as someone who is systematically training people from all over the world for over 10 years now, the biggest pitfall is that people say they want truth, but they actually don't. Because they don't know that in order to know truth, you have to have a relationship with truth. You have to interact with truth. You have to basically recalibrate your inner compass, all right, with everything that you experience, that you interact with, that you relate with. Because the majority of us, what we do, and I don't even want to call it ego or anything like that, there's no judgment in that, is that we make our decisions based on a sympathy, like some kind of resonance with something, or the rejection, or the dissonance with something, but without asking ourselves why. All right, so I'm, trying to motivate you and encourage you. Ask yourself why you have resistances. Go in there. When you discover patterns in you, or blocks in you, or triggers in you, feel into it. It's called internalizing. We can only get to truth through internalizing it. That means we have to go in it. We have to feel through it. We have to prove to ourselves that we're going to survive our fear or our pain. We have to form a certain level of resilience with our own inner experience. And guess what? What you will discover is really that there is a part in you that doesn't have to identify with your body, doesn't have to identify with your emotions or your thoughts. There's a part in you that can observe your sensations, that can observe your emotions, that can observe your thoughts, and even your mental, emotional, and physical looping. We call this consciousness, guys. And so it's really important to understand that, these forces that influence your choices, that they are basically greater than your skill to discern truth, unless you train this skill, unless you work with it, unless you form a relationship with it. And here at transCODES, we do this through systematically helping people to discern and form a vocabulary, literacy about their own physical sensations, energetic sensations, their own emotions, their own thoughts, their beliefs, their critical inner voice, and their interpretations, and their payoffs. What do I get out of staying here, right? And what these inner and outer perceptions are, and how they influence another, how our perceptions, what we project out, what we express out, then what feedback it creates in others, that mirrors this back to us. These are things that need to be trained, all right? And yes, it begins with the scriptures. We begin to learn how to express things a bit more clearly, which for many of you is already very healing. It's the journaling, the awareness making of how do I truly feel, what do I truly want, where do I truly belong. The big question, who am I and what is my purpose, all right, is sort of the mastering of this skill. This is the graduation gift, okay, that you know who you are and what you came here for, and that you can apply this in every situation of your life. You do not need anything from the outside, because this truth compass that you have here in the center of your chest is always online, provided that you are present in the now. Provided that you don't focus on the future too much with your fears and your projections, or that you hold on to the past too much with your pains and with all the memories that keep sort of keep the self-defeating cycle alive. So when you have this relationship with your true self, when you actually interact with it internally, that's then when you can discern truth. Because all you got to do is, systematically go through all the different layers of your perception, your true feelings. What do I truly need? What is the information here actually saying? What is the bias behind that? What is my bias? Okay, what makes me want to do this? Okay, is this even true? How many times do we still catch ourselves, against better knowing, okay, doing something? You can catch this, guys. You're not a victim of your own experience. But you have to know how to ask the right questions, and you have to know where you want to be with this. And most of all, and this is the part here that is probably the hardest for many of you in the beginning, you need to know when you have arrived. You need to know what this inner peace that you've described earlier, the fulfillment, okay, of the seeking, what that feels like. And because most of you are living in a constant state of inner confliction, contradiction, and stress, you don't even know what this could feel like. And so this is why we use, techniques and practices such as meditation, contemplation, breathing, and all these things that are known, through the mindfulness movement to help you to calm your system, your nervous system, to silence your mind, to connect better with your emotions, and to go into relationship with all of this. All right, that's then when you can ask bigger questions. What is my integrity? What do I stand for? All right, and what's my mission? When I talk to younger people, the first question is always, who am I? But then the second question is, what is my purpose? What is my mission? And what am I supposed to do? And these are questions that are like extremely advanced. They're like the graduation class. All right. First, we need to do the ABCs, of this inner lexicon, as I call this, the inner lexicon of our energetic sensations. And what do we need for this? Besides the systematic training, we need somebody who can guide us through that, who can give us a roadmap through that. But we need this ability to hang on a moment, all right, and take everything that we are experiencing and move out of the experiencer and move into the witnesser in us. The witnesser in us can still experience everything that is going on. Oh yeah, I'm feeling really tired right now. Oh, I'm feeling really angry right now. Oh, I'm having a lot of inner negative talk. Okay, this is the witnesser that can observe all this happening. We call this consciousness. All right, and train that so that for the future you can know better. So the conclusion and also the essence of consciousness work is that if we knew better, we would have done better. But in order to do better, we have to understand first. And in order to understand, we need to establish what is truth. We need to establish a relationship with truth. And then we have to go out and express it and go into feedback with our environment, with the people around us, our family, our, nature, work, money, all these 3D layers of that determine our daily truth, so to speak, and see what is true to us and what isn't. What works for us, what doesn't, what makes us feel grow and expand, and what makes us feel unfree and dependent. What makes me inspired, or what makes me restricted? What makes me feel free, and what makes me feel afraid? That is what we need this ability to discern truth for. so that everything we are relating with, we are interacting with, everything we're experiencing, observing and witnessing can be internalized and lead to inner peace. The peace of knowingness and trusting. Yes, as you said. So this is why this is so important. Because when we are in this constant state of seeking, of questioning ourselves, we miss all the signals that are coming in from our own body, for example. This is how we see how disease manifests. This is how emotional looping manifests. This is how mental looping, this constant back and forth manifests. This is how we make really detrimental decisions in our life, where we were in the moment not able to discern truth. And the cool thing about consciousness work and this sort of systematic training, guys, is that you become so free and independent that you don't even remember what the hold-up was. You become a beacon of truth, and this is then also when you feel the need to go out and help others to do the same, because you will then feel that sharing and synergy and creating mutual abundance, going into this mutual exchange of truth, that is even more fulfilling than just inner peace. So this concludes my truth talk here for today. Would you like to ask questions or comment? Share some of your wisdoms, share some of your truths here today. What are some of your experiences? I know some of you actually work with me, and it might be cool for others to hear what your experiences are with this proposed, systematic truth training and internalizing things for yourself. What are some of your guys' experiences? It'd be awesome if you could leave comments here for people who watch this video. There's going to be an edited version on YouTube. I won't be able to carry over these remarks and comments. Maybe even better to leave it here on my Facebook page. What are your experiences with truth training, especially here in conjunction with how we do this at transCODES? Thank you guys for tuning in. Check the YouTube channel, subscribe, share this with your friends, with your family, and discuss these things. These are very, very important questions. The school of the art of asking questions, guys, that is the roadmap to truth. Exactly. Inner strength then comes from collaboration. Yes, this is this mutual exchange, yeah. And it isn't about being right, it is about interchanging. It's like, okay, from my perspective, this looks like this and this and this. What does it look like from yours? And to stay in this constant feedback and self-correction and self-healing. I agree with you, Kirk. Yes, and some people, and this is, a typical consequence of sort of being overwhelmed and being pessimistic, is to go into this relativism and say, we're all just a tiny little speck of sand, in the desert of life, and we have no purpose. I agree with you where you say that, the purpose is more something that comes out of what this person loves, what this person is good at, and to bring that into expression. Yes, I often call this the essence. So it isn't about something special. It is about loving what we do, doing what we love, and then sharing it with others. Yes. And this is, in metaphysical, spiritual terms, called co-creation. Thank you so much. Yes, use these questions to discuss this, guys. Don't try to make other people see truth that is untrue in and of itself. Ask questions instead, and know when it's making no sense, because the bias is a different one than yours, when it's better to walk away, because otherwise, it'd be constricting for you. As always, you can ask me for a free energy coaching session. This is where we create a roadmap together. Send me an email or check transcodes.com. It's lovely being here with you. See you next week. Bye-bye.